All right, y'all. Welcome back to the channel. And we are super pumped and excited tonight to have a really awesome guest on, Curtis Stone, who is up in British Columbia.
Yep.
And Curtis is rolling out a new course. And what's kind of incredible about this, we've had our YouTube channel for probably about 6 years now. And one of the absolutely, if we have been asked no less than 2,000 to 3,000 times, how do I buy property? Where do I buy property?
Yes.
What do you recommend? What can I do? How do I do this? And what is so incredible, this course is so very it just covers so many awesome, excellent points. And the way that you do this, Curtis, how this happened is I was listening to Grand Theft World podcast, which is one of my absolutely favorite podcasts. And you've been on there several times. And I was listening to Richard Grove interview you about this program, and I'm like, man, this hits every high note. And then what it does is, there's a lot of people that are totally new to like homesteading, permaculture, buying land in general, not living in an apartment, right? So 90% of the stuff that you do and look at and analyze, like the average person that's just even considering this it's not even a notion. Like they wouldn't even know to even think about it and consider it. So I am, if you can't tell, like I'm like super jonesing to have Curtis on here. Thanks for your time. And I'm really excited for you to talk about this course and explain kind of the high points and what you put together over, basically it's like all your years of experience consolidated into a nutshell. And it's very exciting, and it's going to answer a lot of people's questions. Welcome to the show, Curtis.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, it's I've been doing consulting for a long time, and I stopped. I took a break, probably starting a couple years ago. Started having kids and getting busy with other things. But I've always wanted to teach people what I've learned over the years, because I've, as the urban farmer journey and all that, and then just running my own farm and teaching farming workshops around the world, mostly in the US, but I've been pretty extensively through New Zealand and Australia and a bit of Europe. And I've just learned so much about land and so much about property and whatnot. And I've always wanted to find a way to teach people that. And it was just kind of came up this winter. I'm just brainstorming with some of the folks in my team. We have a pretty awesome team at freedomfarmers.com and fromthefield.tv and a very collaborative group. And we're trying to brainstorm a way to build this content out and what it would look like. And it just kind of started to kind of come together as in, well, what if I just did kind of real-time consults and showed people the process? And we actually do it 54 times. At first we had 40 properties, then we had 52, and now it's 54. But basically what I do is what I did for many years, because people would just reach out to me. I did all kinds of consulting. My whole career as the urban farmer, going back to 2010, really involved consulting. Because I guess there's so few people that know anything about farming, right?
Yeah.
The whole world has become very urbanized.
Yeah.
And not only do people not know anything about farming, they just don't know anything about the land. And so what we've done is we can talk about some of the framework and all that in this stream. But what I've always kind of, it's refined over the years, but basically what I use is this framework of analysis that involves kind of firstly setting a foundation of what the client wants. What do you want to look for in the land? What do you want to do on that land? Where do you imagine living? Kind of just understanding their context first as a foundation. to look at everything through. Then from there, we go through this kind of 12-piece process. The first thing is, when we look at a property, is we look for threats, so that if there's a threat there, it might be a threat on the land itself. It might be a threat that's nearby. Maybe there's, big ag you're trying to buy, filter pivots and GMO corn or whatever. And we eliminate the threat, so that we just eliminate properties that have threats, because you don't want to live near a big threat.
Yeah.
And then from there, we go through these 11 other things, which are called the scales of permanence, which were originally thought of by this kind of Renaissance man in Australia named P.A. Yeomans.
Okay.
And he came up with it's called the keyline plow, which was you might have heard some of the big permaculture guys talk about keyline design, and basically that means using contours and moving water out to the ridges by plowing these key lines into the land that just kind of go off contour a little bit, so that water naturally migrates out towards ridges, so that guys like Joel Salatin, this is kind of thing that's applicable and that kind of stuff. But anyways, P.A. Yeomans came up with this amazing framework or this analysis process, which originally had 8 things, but then these 2 other permaculture designers, Dave Jackie and Eric Townsmere, they added a few more pieces to it to make it 11. And so I go through this 11-piece framework, which starts with climate. And basically the idea with the scales of permanence is that at the top of the scale, it's near impossible to change or very difficult. And then as you get down, it gets easier. So you start with climate, then we talk about geography, water, socioeconomics, access and circulation, microclimates, soil, buildings and infrastructure, so on and so forth. You go through all these things. And then once you do that, when you analyze a property through that lens, you get a really good sense of the amount of resources it's going to take to change that property.
And what I thought was so fascinating about that filter, right? Isn't it like the last one, like curb appeal? So like that list, like when you were describing it, that list is literally the inversion of the 99 percentile of people that look at property.
Exactly. It literally is.
It's completely inverted. And that's why this course is going to be so incredibly, it's going to shift everybody's paradigm, right?
Yeah.
And then it's going to it's going to teach them what's important, and saying, hey, you want to do this, and you're going to invest this time and money and effort and lifestyle, and and now you're going to be able to do it in an educated fashion, where it's not like, I mean, Curtis, man, when we moved 9 years ago, we had never been to Texas, right? And and now at least I hadn't, and not only had we never been to Texas, I had never grown anything in my life. Like,
where are you guys from originally?
We're from the Northeast, like up near New York, tri-state area.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And we were like we grew up in neighborhoods and whatnot, and with no type of farming background or experience. Now, all of our grandparents farmed and stuff, but like my parents' generation and my generation had never even planted anything. And so we're like, well, we know because of the 2A laws and the homeschool laws, we had decided between a couple states. And it's interesting how when you discuss your program with Tornado Alley and some of the different things that your filters that you use, in my mind, the reason we chose Northeast Texas is I knew it was green. I knew about the rainfall. I also, one of my filters was, I knew there was potential issues at the border. So basically I wanted to be just barely in Texas, where it was green, but far enough away from the border so that wouldn't necessarily be an issue. That was like how we decided. And but I'm just thinking, man, if before we made our decisions, if we had this filter system course, logic, and just what's really neat about your course is it's just illustrations of you doing it over and over again. And you're basically training the person just by sheer observation. Like, look,
that's right.
This is how I find it. And I'm like, and that's the kind of learner that I am, visual
Me
like
too.
that.
Yeah.
And I honestly think most people are. And with this type of subject, it's so pertinent because this is a tactile visual thing, and you're showing how to do it remotely, which is even that much more powerful. Um,
Yes.
that's why I really think this is going to be a great tool, and it's going to answer a lot of people's questions and maybe mobilize them quicker. And what it's going to do is they're going to take advantage of, as this real estate market starts to soften and collapse. It's going to multiply their dollars, is what it's going to do, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's going to multiply their experience on the land, because if you buy a property that had a sort of a red flag that you didn't see, and then you buy it, well, now you're stuck with it.
Yeah.
And so, I'm promoting this course to people like us and people who want to get on the line, not multimillionaires who can afford a mistake like that.
Right.
Though it has been interesting actually watching the signups, and that there's a number of I've seen a few dozen realtors sign up because I look at the emails coming in and I
Wow.
see the
Oh, that's
handles
pretty
of so
smart.
and so real
Yeah,
estate
that's
company.
pretty smart.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, because here's the thing: looking for a homestead property is a totally different lens than looking for a
Yep,
home, right?
exactly.
And like you
Totally.
said, curb appeal,
1,000,000%.
that's actually our last thing in the scales of permanence, which is aesthetics and experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's important, right?
Yeah.
And then
Mhm.
buildings and infrastructures in there too, but it's still fourth from the bottom.
Yeah.
We're looking at climate, landform, water, socioeconomics, access and circulation, vegetation, wildlife.
Exactly.
All those things are before those,
Yeah.
because when your context is living on the land, growing food, raising animals, having a family,
Yeah.
it's different. Or wildcrafting. This is a big part of living on larger acreage that a lot of people overlook. And I mean, for me, we're on a fairly large acreage at 40 acres. And we also have a huge area around us that is
Woods.
just unused property that's woods. Yeah,
Wow, that's
we
great.
can explore for days out here and just harvest wild mushrooms. We have morels popping up right now.
Wow.
Wild game is unbelievable out here: moose and deer and turkeys, and it's amazing. And so, yeah, those things are all different when you're looking for a homestead, because the context is that much more different. And the thing that will blow people's mind on this course is just how we prioritize those things. And most people, when they look at a real estate listing, they just look at the photos and then they kind of just go with that. Whereas
Yep.
we
Yep.
have in the course, basically what we do is we analyze 52 properties in every USDA zones 3 through 9, and then
Wow.
we go almost every US state. There's a number of places that you just can't get good properties in right now, like Idaho
Right.
is just such high
Yeah.
demand, you can't even get
Mhm.
anything there.
Yeah.
Whereas this Texas, a lot of good stuff in Texas still, a lot of good
Yeah.
stuff in what's it called? What am I drawing a blank? Where the Ozarks are.
Arkansas, Missouri?
Missouri, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Missouri, a lot of good stuff in Missouri. We actually looked at a number of properties there. But basically, I had a team helping me, a research team help me find the properties, because it was a massive undertaking. We didn't want to just go on realtor.com or Zillow or whatever
Right.
one you're using and you just like pick a bunch of stuff at random and then analyze it, because then you just have a bunch of wouldn't have good lessons. So we basically
Yeah.
reviewed hundreds of properties across North America, and then we filtered that down to these 54.
Wow.
Then I got my team to source all the climate data, socioeconomic data. So I basically had like a one pager for each property. And then I went in cold and then reviewed these properties as if I did with my consulting. Because I used to just do this for consulting. I'd get people that reach out to me that are looking for a farm or a homestead or whatever. And they just say, here's, a handful of properties. Can you give us a review of these? And I would just charge them $400 an hour to do that,
Right.
and they would get good value out of it, because I would,
Sure.
I'd say, hey, don't buy this property, or this one is definitely your best winner. And so I do that for people. And then I go through this analysis. We start with the real estate listing, and then we locate it on Google Earth. And then we kind of each video is in 3 parts. There's the overview, where I kind of look at the listing, read the blurb, and then kind of look at the overall climate of the place, the location in North America. Then I go into an in-depth analysis where I'm just kind of looking for things, looking for threats, zooming in, zooming out, what have you. And then we finish with an evaluation, which is where I go through this checklist of our scales of permanence. And then I assign a score to each layer or each scale. And then each property gets basically a point score. And so it's either an A property, which is this is really strong, a B, maybe a C, which is a no. And what we tried to do is analyze enough properties to give people a really broad understanding of what's out there. And that's why we wanted to go USDA zones 3 through 9, which is
everybody.
Yes, some people live in zone 2, but that's
sure.
Subpolar. And yes, some people in the US live in zone 10. That's only the southern tip of Florida and the Key West and all that. But most people are in the US, it's really 5 through 8 is where the most population lives. And we actually looked at more properties in those areas just to accommodate different types of scenarios. But yeah, we look at we run the whole gamut of all kinds of properties and show all kinds of different scenarios. And it was really a neat process too, because some places were I thought that just by looking at the listing, I thought, this property looks like a kind of a sure bet. And then we get into Google Earth and we zoom in and we look at things and it's like, wow, some of these turned out to be total failures that I thought were going to be good. And then people get to see that process in real time.
Yeah.
And so my hope is that, because I'm a real first principles guy, at the same time, I'm the kind of learner that needs to just do things over repetition and just kind of do it, right? Probably like you guys. And so that's my hope, is that I just kind of give people the framework. Here's the principle foundation of what we're doing. And then watch me do it 54 times. There's over 30 hours of content with this. And then just through repetition, watch me. And then I think it's going to really help people. I think too, it's going to help people not only with finding real estate, but I think it actually help you understand what to do with your land. Because
I thought it was,
I show people, like, I would do this, I would put this, I'd put a pond here, and so on and so forth. You know?
And what I thought was fascinating is even how you're able on Google Earth Pro to show like the time of the year and where the sun is in the sky, so you can see what the exposure is. And I'm just like, man, this is so thorough, because I mean, that's the whole point, man. We're growing food. I mean, we're growing kids, we're growing food. And to analyze something so thoroughly, because like I said, so many people, and from someone that actually did it, that was just, and we did it when there weren't even that many YouTube channels of people doing it. And I even, you think of your metamorphosis where you started in the urban setting, and you mastered that, and then you just went, I mean, literally just wild and then off grid, and then just made it like a paradise. And it just shows you, that's an illustration of the value that you're bringing of what is possible. And by taking that knowledge, whether is a piece of raw land or whether there are buildings on it, like what's possible, and you avoid so much extra expense and cost if the analyzation on the front end is done properly. You're just going to avoid a lot of headaches and heartaches.
Big time. And you know what's kind of funny is, like, I shifted my whole kind of YouTube persona to being off grid with Curtis Stone opposed to the urban farmer. That was the urban farming space just got so inundated with social justice and all that I couldn't be that anymore, because I hate that stuff. And so, but the truth of it is, though, is most of my consulting and work on farms has been on rural farms from the beginning. I mean, very few people actually urban farm. So all the works, I mean, I've probably only taught workshops on a handful of urban farms in my entire career of doing that. They'd always just been on rural market gardens. And so, and with my consulting too, it's always been rural. Very few people actually do urban farming. when you just look at, if you total up all farmers, especially like small scale or regenerative or things like that, very few do urban farming. And so I actually had way more experience in rural settings than people would assume, just because my whole thing was the urban farmer. But, all my workshops down in the US were all on rural farms, and I always just worked with rural people. And it's actually that one of the things that kind of woke me up to just and kind of transforming to this new thing that I'm doing now was actually traveling to the US and going into the deep South and hanging out with people in Tennessee and Alabama and Georgia and Florida and stuff, and just realizing that I really liked Americans, because Canadians have this thing with Americans. It's kind of like how New Zealanders and Australians have a thing.
Right.
Australians are a lot more crude and sarcastic and funny and friendly, but they're not polite. It's kind of, and New Zealanders are kind of soft-spoken and timid, and polite. They don't make jokes that much. But in Canada and the US is the same thing. Canadians are known as being really polite and nice, but not friendly. Right. But Americans, I find, generally speaking, I've traveled through 42 US states. I found that Americans are typically not polite as in the way that Canadians are. Not to say that Americans can't be polite, but just generally speaking. And Canadians have this attitude of Americans, and it comes from our liberal media, industrial complex, and all that. But I always had this stereotype of what Americans were like, and then I started going to teach workshops down in the South, where up here people think it's all hillbilly rednecks and all that. And I just fell in love with the American attitude, especially in the South. And I just found the more I traveled and hung out with Christians and real family people, that I really just liked. It just resonated with me, and it kind of woke me up to a lot of the propaganda that we get up here, but also just that heartland attitude, in the US. And it just resonates so much more with who I am, and a lot of Canadians are actually that way, because there's so many Canadians that are actually very rural, and so people usually get judged by the attitude of people in cities, right? And you guys
you're exactly right. Yeah,
where you guys are at, the average attitude of somebody in Dallas or Austin is going to be very different from people in rural Texas. And so
very much.
That kind of woke me up to it, and kind of just changed my whole outlook on it, and it just made me want to be more involved in those kinds of people, because that just resonated with my values, and especially being a family guy, married with 2 kids and stuff, and just resonating with that culture a lot more.
Yeah, growing up in the Northeast, when I was 19, I spent many years in college, and when I was 19, I went to a Bible school in Tennessee, and the experience changed my life, because it was so weird, because I'm like, whoa, everybody's nice down here. This is really weird.
I know.
Everybody waves at me. They don't know me, and they wave, and
especially coming from New York, right?
Yeah, and it was just like, this is so weird. And and I told my wife when we got married, I'm like, I don't know how this is all going to play out, but if we ever get the chance, I just want to move south. I don't know where yet, but it impacted me that much. And then it was, so 9 years ago, we've been married for 20, so it was like 13 or so years before it happened. But that impression, I mean, and Tennessee is just so
amazing,
beautiful. I mean,
except Memphis.
Well, yeah. Memphis is a
Memphis
pile, is everything that's wrong with everywhere,
and so sketchy. But no, I agree. And I first time I went down Tennessee, Alabama, Arkansas, I was just floored on how nice and helpful people were.
Yes, yeah.
And everybody, like every walk of life, people, as long as you're not in the major cities, but just people were so nice. Just man. What a place to be. And I mean, this is one thing that, I'm hoping that I can help people with in this course, is that one of the greatest things you guys have in the US is the idea of the states. I mean, let's be
Yes.
honest, the
Walk to
Americana
freedom.
is
Yep.
really kind of dead in many ways,
Yep.
but there still is the remnants of it. But in the US, the fact that you can move from New York, which has become an absolute Democratic nightmare,
Yeah.
Democrat nightmare, and then come into Texas, and you have that ability. And I just think right now, when people kind of look at what's going on in the general kind of political atmosphere, hey, you can get out of New York State and Pennsylvania and Connecticut or whatever, and you can come down to Texas and Alabama or Arkansas or these other states and have a completely different experience.
Yeah.
It's and a totally different climate too, which is also amazing, because in Canada, we only have so many different zones of difference. But in the US, I mean, you've got zones really 4 through 10. The massive difference in climate and geography and everything, and cultural experience, just so different, so diverse. What an opportunity, and to still have that. Whereas a lot of people in the world are kind of stuck in the places that they are, and it's quite a privilege to have that American experience and move to somewhere like Texas.
It's what Jack Spirko refers to as walking to freedom, and he's a PA kid, and he moved to Texas, and it's definitely.
Oh yeah, I've known Jack for years, and Jack's a good buddy of mine, and I didn't actually know that he was from Pennsylvania originally.
Yeah,
I always thought he was, because he sounds like a Texan, but maybe he's been there long enough now that
he's been down here a while.
Yeah.
Yep. So okay, well let's throw up the link for the course, and as you can see here, the course is going to be launching on Saturday, I guess Friday at midnight. Is that when it launches?
Yeah, well, the early bird, so the offer that you guys have there is that's when the course will be ready to purchase. So yeah, it starts. So the early bird offer is from the 15th through the 18th. So it ends, I think, it ends the 17th at midnight.
All
right. And so people have 3 days to purchase it at the discount price, which is going to be, I think, $347 US.
Okay.
And then it'll go up about 200 or so bucks after that. And so, which is, if you think about the value that we create with this, I could literally charge thousands of dollars for this information. Yeah, and I know people like realtors and real estate investors would pay me that, because that's sometimes a lot of the clients I worked for were people that just wanted a professional analysis, understands that niche in real estate, and then they go and sell those properties to higher bidders or whatever. I could have charged a lot more, but I just want to get this out to a lot of people, because I think with where this whole New World Order thing is going, you'll own nothing and be happy.
Yep, you're right.
This might be one of our last opportunities to get a lot of people out of the cities and onto the land. And so I want to just kind of price it that way. At the same time, I'm a capitalist, and I understand that people need to understand value.
Value.
I don't think it's kind of like the old cliche, easy come, easy go. You give away so much good information for free, then people don't value it.
People ignore it.
Whereas if you have at least some value to it, then people take it seriously. And I want people to take it seriously, because if you're going to go and get on the land,
what's the value of peace of mind? I mean, because most of the people that are going to be looking at this, I mean, if you're some stinking normie, some like cul-de-sac normie, or just some neighborhood, I'm telling you, I mean, I grew up in a very poor white neighborhood. I mean, blue collar. If there was a collar, it was blue, and it was definitely dirty. And I didn't know how poor we were until I got older, and I'm like, oh wow, we were really poor. And single income. My dad was a general contractor. He started out in a cannery, and he honed all his skills there, and then the cannery closed, and he was like, oh, I guess I'll just become a handyman. And that grew into a contractor thing. And, but what you've put in this course, one, it answers all these questions that people have, but it answers all these questions that people don't even know to ask. And all of those questions are what are going to set them up. So what is the value of peace of mind? Like, oh, wow, $300 or $400. And I'm going to know what questions to ask. And then you're going to enable me to answer those questions. And you're going to show me how to do it remotely. I mean, there's so much monetary savings in that. Like, well, I could fly down there.
That's right. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because I mean, you know what it's like when you want to move to a different state, coming from New York, going down to Texas. I mean, that's not a cheap thing to make happen, and it takes time. And so that's essentially, because you can, for what I show people by using this framework, using tools like Google Earth Pro, and just information we can source. You can go on the county websites too and find more specific information about properties. That's not hard to do. But you can do 99% of your search from home and get a really good sense of what a place is going to be like when you go there, so that there's not any major surprises. Ultimately, if you're going to buy a piece of property, you got to go there and visit it, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
But the whole thing that I'm trying to show people that is, if you want the best deal, you want the best opportunity, you need to look at more opportunities. So the more places you look at and the more you filter them down, the better chance you're going to have of picking a winner. And like, let's face it, if you're going to invest a few $100,000 in a property, if you get that wrong, that's an expensive mistake. If you get it right, it could change your life and the legacy for yourself and your children.
That's right.
For many years. And, you know, properties that have water and good topography are really important. Also, properties that have lots of vegetation and wildlife, that's something that a lot of people overlook. And I mean, I've looked at a lot of properties in Texas too, and I can tell you, there's a lot of properties down there, even in Oklahoma and Arkansas and stuff, that are just super exposed. Just there's no trees, you know. Trees take a lifetime to grow in an afternoon to take down. So you're better off starting with trees. And this is one of the things that's really nice down in your guys' climates, is that you have hardwood. And so hardwood, you know, with oak and stuff like that, these trees kind of fan out. And so you have the ability to, in warmer climates especially, run your operation under tree cover. You can move animals on pasture underneath trees. That's more challenging for us with softwood and evergreen trees. But with hardwood, you've got that. And it's but yeah, I mean, having a property with good vegetation is, to me, I would not buy a property without trees. I would never do it. You look at some properties up in Wyoming's a really tough climate. You know, Wyoming, Montana, many parts of Colorado, of course, Arizona, New Mexico. Those are all the high desert climates, and they're what's referred to as a BSK climate. It's your arid, cold desert, hot as hell in the summer, but cold and dry, very inhospitable, no soil,
brutal,
no water,
extreme. That's brutal.
And you know, when we look at where this whole New World Order thing is taking us, we're going to have to become more self-reliant. If people don't want to take the poison shots and go along with whatever the newest puppet president has to offer, that you need to be self-reliant. You got to have food, water, energy, shelter. That's the four nexuses of human survival. You need to have those things if you want to have more resilience to the system. And of course, it's always going to be varying degrees of that independence. And as we get on the land and get better at it and develop our homesteads, we get more and more independent, right? Freedom isn't a 0 to 1. It's 0 to 100.
Yes.
And it's a scale in there. And the more you work on your homestead, develop it, get the skill base, you know, because it's one thing to just get there, but it's another thing to do the stuff. And all these things take time. And frankly, I don't share the doomsday attitude that a lot of people in the truth community or prepper community do. I don't think it's all 5 seconds to midnight. I don't think, I'm not worried about nuclear war. I'm not worried about them rounding us up. I think this is all going to be a long haul. I've come to that conclusion based on reading their documents and just watching and observing what they do and looking at patterns.
Well, that's exactly what I said. You know, when people want to talk about China and Russia, and I'm like, well, first off, right, China and Russia and World War whatever, if they really, if the war isn't just for show, like if I was China or Russia, I just sit back and let all the transformer nonsense and all the shenanigans that's going on, let America implode on itself. Why would you waste money on bombs and bullets or anything? It's going to
Such a good
self-implode.
point. Such a
It's
good
like,
point. And
why
they
would
know
you?
that.
They know that.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I think it's really important to stay positive with this. I mean, you guys are a family. If anybody needs to stay positive, it's a family. Because if you're all doom and gloom, and a lot of people that are doom and gloom are single, and it's easy for them to be that way. I mean, I see a logical reason to be optimistic, but you're totally right. We are in this sort of 5th generation warfare.
Yeah.
And it's, silent weapons for quiet wars. And what you're saying is absolutely right. They want America to implode because America and sort of the Americana idea is really the last bastion of freedom. It's like Reagan said, 100%. If we lose freedom here, where else do you go? Not that Reagan was probably a puppet with them as well, but the words were important, the ideas were there. And that's exactly right, because and just look at what they're doing. If there was going to be this hot war in America, why would they be bothering with all this propaganda and this controlling of the narrative? They want, more than anything, they want a civil war in America. They want to ignite the conservative right with getting pissed off about transgender pedophile time and all that stuff, and that stuff ticks me off a bit too. At the same time, I'm not ready to go to war with these people because they're just people and they're misguided, whatever. But they want a civil war in America because, as you said, then they do the work. And if you look at the patterns of the New World Order, that's what they do every time. These people are lazy and they're not creative, and they want you to do the work. And it's what the bankers are going to do. And this is where the opportunity is for us, is the way the bankers keep the poor and keep the rich getting richer is they print money and they make it out of nothing. And then they create this scam called a mortgage, which is basically a complete fraud. And they lend the poor people the money at interest. The only money that ever existed was the down payment you put on. Then they made up the rest, then made you work on the asset for the next 20 years. And then they throttle the interest rates and inflation rates, make you go poor, and then the bank just got an appreciated asset, which they had to do nothing for.
And they amortized and front-load the interest because they know the average homeowner lives in a home for 5 years, so you pay all the interest in the first 7. So you're never gaining any value.
No.
And like you were saying about this self-reliance, self-resilience is 0 to 100. The other multiplier is when you're in rural America, Canada, when you're in that rural community is parallel. And so the multiplying factor is you're in this rural country setting, developing your skills, honing your skills, improving and getting better. And then so is your neighbor. You might not be able to see your neighbor from your front step, but he's over there through the tree line, over the river and through the woods. And he's doing kind of the same thing. And maybe he's doing it in a little different way. Maybe he has different skill sets or different interests, but that's where this whole parallel and when those two families come together, right, as a community, now that 0 to 100 just became 0 to 200.
Exactly. And that's partly why I don't think they're going to do the sort of proverbial roundup, and they're just going to hammer us again. Because if the government, and it's the same, the governments in Canada, US, Australia, it's all the same. It's the same agenda being implemented everywhere.
Yeah.
Because some people just go, well, they're just going to come and take your property. I hear that in the comment section. They're just going to come and take your goods. Yeah.
So I'm not going to do anything.
Exactly. It's a virtue signal to create an excuse to be lazy, essentially.
Yeah.
But if they did that, all they would do is unite the people you just described. And they don't want that. They want us divided. Right. So that's why I think logically this whole thing is just going to play out in this really long slog. And there's good and bad to that. But if people see the writing on the wall, there's still time. There's
Yeah.
still time to get out of the city,
There is.
get on the land, and build up a homestead. We're going to be having the same conversation in 5 to 10 years. I guarantee you.
You're right. And see, rounding us up, right? You want to know what the roundup is? The people that are already stacked in the high rise, they already rounded themselves up.
They're already rounded up.
They'll control, stack them, pack them, track them, and the numbers are good enough. Like they technically they don't even need us. Like they got the millions.
That's it. And I like to draw the parallel to farm animals. And I Joel Salatin's a friend of mine, and we've had this conversation a number of times. But the first time I told him this was down at one of the Mother Earth News fairs, and I blew his mind. I was like, Joel, what do you think about the parallel between holistic land management with animals and socialism in the cities? And he was like, what? And I basically explained it as in that when you have animals in a CAFO, in the caged animal feeding operation, versus on the pasture, animals get to be, as Joel calls it, the pigness of the pig and the cowness of the cow and the chickenness of the chicken. You get to have, there's just total parallels to that. You know, when you're in the cage, you know you're in the cage, you're demoralized and
you're crapping on each other.
Oh, it's terrible, but it's so much easier to control. Whereas in the other aspect, it's not so much. And I think, as you said, I mean, they've already rounded themselves up. And when I heard because I use chickens, we raise chickens for meat and eggs, and I move my chickens around in the gardens. I use them to chew up the garden residue from the previous crop and fertilize the crop for the next one, fertilize the soil for the next one. And when I herd my chickens to an area, I just kind of do it with a stick and I kind of move them. And when I'm moving a large area or a large amount of them, I don't care about one or two getting out. I just want to get the herd to the spot, and then I'll go deal with those afterwards. I think the same time, the New World Order or the controlling elite do the same thing with people. And that's why right now they're only focused on the masses. They don't care about us because we're a tiny minority of people. They're not worried about us. They got to keep people focused on this main thing. And as you said, hack them, track them, stack them. In these cities, they don't care about us. I think they're actually just going to let us go. And when you read Agenda 21 or Agenda 2030, it's all about this massive urbanization.
Yeah,
they don't talk about what they're going to do with people. In this, I've read these documents page to page. I have the hard copies of them. They don't talk about what they're going to do. They talk about rewilding. They talk about letting the countryside go wild. But how that's going to look, we've already started to see this. Brownouts. We saw it in Texas last year. Yeah, right. We're going to see it again and again. They're going to disincentivize us off the land, and that's going to shake out a lot of people. There's no question.
Sure.
And so people got to start.
Technically, Curtis, it kind of has already happened, you know, with like you were talking about on the Grand Theft World podcast with where you were watching these COVID buys, right? And then these people, they panic COVID buy, they buy the rural property, fix it all up, man, put in the cool infrastructure. And then their wife's like, Tom, this was a terrible idea. I just want to move back next door to Tina, and I want the in-ground pool again. And so we're going to sell this at a discount, and I'm going back to suburbia.
And we saw that. I'm not kidding you guys. Like in a good amount of the properties we looked at, I was like, this place is amazing. This is a turnkey operation. Wow. And I could just tell, and this will be sort of one of the unintended benefits for people, is a lot of these places that we did in the course are still on sale.
Wow.
And so people are going to get like a full analysis, and some of the lucky people that get into the course early will probably have the opportunity to go and scoop those properties up at a discount, because a third of the properties we looked at were 200 days on the market. The other third were 100 days on the market or more. And then the other third was 52 or more, which is the average days on the market in the US. And so, I mean, you're going to do that. But we saw that. I looked at some places. I was like, this is unbelievable. And I could just tell that people came in and turned and burned. I mean, I looked at this one place in Washington State. I couldn't believe it. It had a series of tiny homes in it. It had a main house. It was off grid, had the beginnings of some gardens, fence infrastructure. It was unbelievable. And it was like literally COVID buyers, people that panicked, went out, did exactly as you described, and then they went back to the city because things kind of got normal.
Oh, it's all back to normal. Yeah,
just go back. No problem. It's all COVID's it's all over.
It's all over now. Joe just said, hey, Joe just let us know it's over.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's amazing. And so, yeah, people will definitely benefit from that. But it's kind of cool too, because what we could learn from these COVID buyers and this rush, the people that went out to buy during that phase, I was one of them and I stayed, is that you can kind of see what people did and you can build on that. And so it's just a great opportunity, because when we looked at properties, we looked at a whole spectrum. We looked at, basically what we did is we picked 15 acres or more, 350,000 US or less. And then we just like, let's look at everything. And so some properties were raw land, some were not. Cause I found that when we were looking, cause we wanted to build, and that's what we're doing now. We were first just looking for raw land. But what we found in that search, and I found the same thing to be in the same trend in the US, is that if you just say, okay, I'll look for raw land, but I'll also look for a single family home, what you'll find is that, say you're looking, I want 50 acres in Texas. You'll find that properties with 50 acres that are raw land, or properties that have an okay home with 50 acres, same price.
Yeah, you're right.
So it's just worth it to look for both, because, hey, if you have a house that's not the nicest, maybe it's you'll renovate it or whatever, at least there's somewhere to go.
That's right.
You can get in there, you could just get in turnkey and live in there.
Right, and you're getting the deal, because so many people are programmed to like, oh, this has to be finished and this has to look nice, and we're gonna have to live in this place and try to renovate it. What was really neat about, we had a pretty unique scenario where we had to our house wouldn't sell. We had to let them foreclose on it, so it trashed my credit. So we were moving with a very finite amount of money, and basically what we had is we had $70,000, and we moved and we started renting, and we were looking, and man, we looked everywhere, and we looked at way over 100 deals. We physically walked 100 deals. And when we
visited 100 properties.
Yeah. And I can't even tell you how many we looked at online and everything.
So this course would have saved you probably 95 trips.
And the crazy thing is when we found this property, there was several things I immediately knew, and one of the things was the exterior was unfinished. And I mean, super easy stuff, siding, fascia. I mean, and I'm certainly not a skilled carpenter. My sons are incredibly skilled finish carpenters now, but and because they did all this, right? And so there's a tip. But but it was unfinished, right? Well, what's that mean? You can't get a conventional mortgage, right? So I'm like, oh, this is perfect. The interior was almost completely renovated and finished. And I'm like, well, this is kind of like the perfect purchase for us. This has got to be a cash buyer.
And there was like no neighbors around here.
Yeah.
You don't got like a trailer park across the street, So
it just became, it just kind of checked all the boxes, and it fit our budget. So
It's amazing how much cheaper stuff is in the US than in Canada. It kind of makes me mad sometimes. Literally, like, because most Canadians live within 60 miles of the US border. So 90% of Canadians live within 60. That's just like right on, because it's warmer.
That's incredible.
Because it's warm.
But also the US is our biggest trading partner.
Yeah.
And Canada gets really rough the further north you go. It's just cold and buggy, and humid in the summer and just cold in the winter. But it's so funny because and we saw this when I was looking for properties in this course, is that I'd look at properties in British Columbia, which is where I am, southern BC, fairly close to the US border. And then I'd look at properties. So say I wanted to buy 50 acres in BC with maybe a house, space to do gardening, whatever, raising animals, some vegetation and wildlife. In BC, that property is almost $1 million. Okay. You go 10 minutes across the US border and you'll find the same property for a third or at least half the price.
Whoa.
It's ridiculous. Canada's real estate market is so inflated. It's absolutely insane. It's It's way more inflated than the US. The US is inflated. There's a lot of stuff sitting on the market, but in Canada, it's just absolutely bonkers. And we actually had a very difficult time finding properties within that category. And we adjusted things for US and Canadian dollars. So if we were looking for properties in the US that were 350 US or less, we were looking for properties around 450 to 500 Canadian dollars for the equivalent in Canada. But we actually gave up on some of them because we wanted to show a wide variety of properties in different climate zones, different type of geographies, and kinds of different scenarios. We just had to bite the bullet. And so a number of properties we showcased in Canada were just 800,000. And it was just like, well, okay, keep the price in mind that it's ridiculous, but we wanted to showcase something, right? But it is in Canada, it's absolutely insane. I got a friend trying to sell I got a friend who's trying to sell a property down the road from me, and he's asking 980,000 Canadian, and it's 27 acres, and it's in the middle of nowhere, house, 1 bathroom.
What?
He's not going to sell it. I told him, I'm like, dude, if you sell that at 750, you probably would sell it now, but at $1 million, just there's no way. And that's where we're at, though. And it's the same in the US. Is that there's a lot of stuff on the market.
That interest rate is killing. That interest rate's killing the purchase price. It's just killing the asking price.
Well, and it's also killing the operational costs too. Well, the inflation rate's kind of killing the operational costs. And the one thing actually here's the thing that's interesting about the US that I didn't know is you guys' property taxes are on average way higher than ours are.
Wow,
interesting.
There's like we're in this weird little bubble because Texas property taxes are pretty amazing. But we're in this weird little bubble right where we are between that and the timber ag and the different exemptions you can get that are property taxes. You know, most people that have property our size are paying, some of them are paying 6,000 to 8,000 in property taxes a year, and we're paying like here we're paying 1,300. So we're still very reasonable
for mine.
Oh wow!
We looked at a property. I think it was in Arizona. $20,000 a year property taxes.
That's incredible.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's like East Coast. That's the way the East Coast is. The East Coast is very common to be paying $2,000 a month in property taxes.
That's
very
ridiculous. What are you getting for that? You know, it's
nothing.
Like service that you're. That's the one thing that's nice about Canada is it's cheap in that regard, because out here where I am, there's no services like we're off grid, right? So we don't have power utility, and even the road that my property is off. Yes, there's the regional area that will come and plow it in the winter every now and then, but there's probably a dozen times in the winter where I actually plow the road.
Wow.
Because I'm that kind of neighbor. And I've got the machinery and I don't mind doing it. It doesn't take me that long. And then everybody can get out and my neighbors appreciate it. But, that's, what are you paying for in taxes? I mean, if they tried to raise our taxes, I'd just be asking them, what the hell are you trying to, what are you offering? What have you added? There's no services here.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's what they're going to do, though. I mean, this is the thing, part of the reason I like cold climates is that if the SHTF happens, then a lot of less people from the cities are going to be coming out here because it's tough, right? And I kind of like that. I'm kind of a Wild West kind of guy in a way. I like the rugged. I like that. I don't.
Curtis, you're going to buy property in Texas. I
want to. I'm telling you, man.
Dropping all the signals, man.
I've been looking. I love Texas, and I hope to be down there in a number of weeks. So we'll see. But yeah, no, Texas. Out of all the places I looked at in the U.S., Texas, Tennessee.
Yeah.
Just thinking, what were my favorites? Texas and Tennessee. I just like the climate in Texas, and where you guys are too is actually my favorite part of Texas, because as you observed, it's green.
Yeah.
You get into western Texas towards New Mexico, it's rough.
Desert. Yeah, it's just rocks and cactus and dry.
We've been we've been all over Texas quite a bit, and Northeast Texas is just unique
Yep, it's
because we've
different.
been all the way down to the Rio Grande, and
Yep.
man, it's just a different world down
It
there.
is, yeah.
And then when you come back up here, it's just so refreshing. And then we actually have a neighbor that just moved in, and he's from the panhandle of Texas. And we were over there, and he was starting his homestead, and he was consulting us a little bit. And we were over
The
there with some
Panhandle,
chain.
that's like underneath New Mexico, right? Is that what
Yeah.
you're talking about? Okay.
No,
Yeah.
the Panhandle's the top
the
part,
top
like
part.
Lubbock and Lubbock, and you know the little top of the T that comes out.
Oh,
Out of the
okay.
top of the
Okay.
T. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And we were over there with some chainsaws and gonna be kind of clearing out his house site and things like that. And I guess up there, I haven't actually personally been up there actually, but he was like, we were cutting down like little tiny trees. And he's like, hey, don't like cut down those. He's like, you're cutting those down way too easy. He's like, and we're like this guy's making like such a big fuss for us cutting down these little trees because it's just like all forest around here. That's like all we have.
Yeah.
That it's like they're
Yeah.
like invasive. And
Oh, yeah.
he's
Well,
like,
that's Tornado Alley up there too, eh?
yeah,
Yep,
yep,
a little bit.
Yeah,
We're like
bit.
where we are with elevation. I mean, they still hit, but they're real soft.
yeah. But what I was trying to
Okay. Yeah.
get at is that there's no trees up there. And then when he moved down here, there's so many trees. So he was like trying to save every
Save
little
trees,
tree.
yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
kind of funny.
Trees are precious.
I know
I'd
they
way
are.
rather start with
They
them.
are.
And yeah, I
Yep,
mean,
yep.
my property is 32 acres of timber of
Wow,
big
that's
softwood
great.
forests, and
That's
I love it.
incredible.
It's amazing. It's just, I take my kids for a walk. We go for walks on our property as if we were just going for a walk in the country. We can
Yeah,
do
that's
that. We can
great. That's
explore.
great.
And
Yeah.
it's cool too. I mean, the US, I mean, I've heard this something like you could take the world's population, give everybody an acre, and they would fit in the state of Texas. There's so much land out there.
It's so
And
crazy.
the
Man.
whole overpopulation thing is such a nothing burger. It's such
Oh,
a
no,
myth.
it's
It's disproven so many times.
bunch of
Nonsense.
junk.
Yeah.
But there's so much land out there, and
Most of their nonsense. That's why they have to try to accelerate everything, because they just know that time is going to absolutely prove them wrong. So we got to create
And it has.
propaganda and scare and accelerate, because
Yep.
if you just wait long enough, they're just
Yep.
be like, yeah. Oh yeah, remember peak oil? Yeah, we're gonna run
peak
out
oil.
of
Oh, I got so wrapped up in that one. Peak oil is a nothing burger. Climate change is a nothing burger.
Yeah.
And especially overpopulation. I mean, that one has
Oh,
been
my.
proven by the test of time for probably
Every
going on
country
50,
is
60 years.
depopulating. Every
Yeah.
country has
Rapidly.
collapsing populations, and that's what's even
Maybe
crazier.
India might be the only exception.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
But everywhere else, there's it's insane. But it's a cool opportunity in the US that I'd feel pretty blessed to be in the US with what's going on, even despite the political environment, because you've got that geographical advantage that you can move out to an area where there's just way less people. And especially in the US, once you go west of the Mississippi, you're in way less population. Like most of the US population is east of the Mississippi.
Yep, that's right.
Right. And there's a reason for that, because the climate is nice.
Sure.
It's very green out there. It's very hospitable. It's a nice place to be, but there's so many people. Just think about, Miami, think about Atlanta, think about New York City and all. There's so many people in these cities. I wouldn't want to be in those areas.
No,
I don't want to be in
big
those areas.
flashpoints.
It's just bad,
Big time. Because that's the thing. If we get to a point like a flashpoint, like you said, we get to a food scenario where people need to get out of the cities very quickly or whatever it is. You just think about every zombie apocalypse movie ever made.
Mhm.
You just don't want to be where there's lots of people, because when everybody panics, 99% of people are going to panic at the same time. Just like we saw with the toilet paper craze at the beginning.
Oh my goodness.
Right?
That was crazy.
Everybody moves at once. And so if you're trying to get out of Atlanta, Georgia, when everybody else is,
Forget it.
you're not going anywhere.
Forget it.
You're walking.
And
Yeah.
the beauty of that too is, you know, where that dense population is, there's this mob mentality,
Yep.
democracy now mindset, you know, that goes right along with it. And when you move away from that, you literally move away from the mentality. And so you're
Yeah.
literally moving and aligning with your value system and avoiding the mob and avoiding the flashpoints. The intrinsic benefits are so incredible, and and property values drop when you do that. You know, it's becomes more affordable. There's so many reasons to
So many
spread out
reasons.
and move.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well,
Oh,
the other thing too was even during the Rona and everything, you would be here on the farm, for maybe a couple weeks, right? And then you would finally go out to town to buy some chicken feed or whatever. And then you would go out into town and then you would, around here we didn't have as much of it, but then you would see somebody maybe wearing a mask or something like random like that. And then you would be like,
oh
"Oh,
yeah, that
oh,
thing.
that thing's still going
I
on,
forgot
huh?"
about that.
Yeah,
yeah,
because, you're just out in the country,
Doing
you're
your
around
yeah,
thing.
all the other neighbors, and they don't give a darn about any of this stuff that's going
Yep,
on either,
that's mental health. I
and,
mean,
and yeah,
it's
it is
just
mental health, and that's going to be of the utmost importance going forward because, as you
yeah,
guys and I all know, that this is not slowing down. They're
no,
accelerating this.
mm,
We're in a
yep,
quickening, and the demoralization is meant to demoralize you, and it's going to continue. And if there wasn't a reason for it, they wouldn't do it. But they need to do it because they need our consent. They need us to be demoralized. They want to push the U.S.
yeah,
into a civil war, and so the time for community,
mm,
spirituality of God, connecting with your community is more important than ever in the long run
yep,
because this is going to be a long haul. And
yeah,
the way demoralization works is it just grinds you over time. And
mm,
living in the city is where you're going to see all these pessimistic attitudes of people just thinking it's all doom and gloom. And I get it when you're surrounded by, like in the city, I lived most of my life. Drag Queen Storytime is
mm,
a weekly event at the public library.
wow,
I could,
yeah, wow,
we got it. It's been 2 years now since we sold our house there, but and we had this place. We crossed over a bit. We had this place and then kept our house for a while. But so I'd still take my kids to the library and stuff every now and then. It like Drag Queen Storytime at the library, and so
mm,
it's visceral. And like
yeah.
that's one of the things that just drives me nuts more than anything. Is
Hey,
mm,
hey, Curtis,
what?
you know what? You know
Go
what
ahead.
struck me today, man? Just talking about wellness and mental health is, and I have not heard anybody talk about this yet, and I know it's going to be coming up soon, but like, and I realize a lot of it is manipulation and propaganda with all this trans stuff, but we just we just mentally traumatized everybody, right? Between we're all gonna die to we all gotta depreciate ourselves of oxygen and put a face diaper on, right? And
Yeah.
people, the entire globe just got traumatized, and now magically people can't figure out what
mm,
genetic chromosomes they have,
mm,
and that is not, because if we rewind 4 or 5 years, like, hey man, like where was all this stuff like 5 years ago? How did this like magically become like
I
this
know.
like super gigantic thing? And I think it's a byproduct of a lot of this mental
yep,
trauma that was
yep,
perpetrated on humanity.
No question about it. I mean,
yep,
if you read like, and if Richard Grove has done such a good job of
Yeah.
this over the years. And I've read a lot of the books that he's recommended, Jay Dyer as well. And you
Yeah.
read the books of these globalists, they talk about this stuff. The Tavistock
Yep.
Institute
Yep.
planned transgenderism.
Yep. Age
You
of
know, I
Aquarius.
call it
Yep.
the cultural wing of the depopulation agenda.
Yep. That's
But
right.
yes, they've and you've probably heard the classic video with Yuri Bezmenov. You guys know that
Yep.
one where he
Yep.
talks about
He
the
covered
four
that video.
stages and all that.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean it's all there. This stuff's been going on forever, and they tell you exactly what they're gonna do. And so, to me,
And
the roadmap's clear, and I'm
yep.
optimistic in a way because I know the roadmap and I know their game, and so
Yep.
I don't worry about it. yeah, it's nice to comment on these things and criticize them as we should, but at the same time, don't wag the dog too much, because then
Exactly.
you're just playing their game. Because the globalists, at the end of the day, they just want people fighting, and so they don't really
Yeah.
care if you're fighting for or against
Right.
pedophile
As
Yep.
story
long as
time,
you're
Yep.
as
in
long as you're
conflict.
fighting.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the Bezmenov video is a perfect example of why I don't think there's going to be World War III, because they've already told you the game plan and it's working. So if it's working at a maximum capacity, why would you mess it up by like inciting a war? And then okay, yeah, let's nuke and trash America so that we can take it over and take all the resources that are nuked. Like that doesn't mean, oh, I just trashed your joint. Now I'm going to take all
Exactly.
your
There's
stuff. Like,
exactly. The whole nuclear war thing is such a nothing burger. It doesn't
yeah,
make any sense at all. And especially with America, because even though despite the fact that America is quite populated, it is still a massive country. And same for Canada. So many resources. Why would they destroy all that? Especially when you think, okay, if it's World War and it's sort of Fortress America versus China and Russia, um, Russia actually is a fairly nice country. I've kind of discovered by just analyzing properties all over the world. But China has nothing left. There's no natural resources in China. They got to bring everything
distorted it.
in.
Yeah.
And so why would they destroy all of that? And I find, doing these sort of logical exercises are really important. And I think if you actually just follow things through to their logical conclusion, you'll often be right. If as long as you're really analyzing and have a good framework of knowledge about how they operate. Again, Richard Grove's podcast is a good one, because
Yeah.
Richard Grove, what I love about his stuff, opposed to say Alex Jones, and I like Alex Jones, but what Richard Grove takes the book, and he's got that camera, and he shows you the book.
Highlighter.
Right?
Yeah.
And this is
They said it.
absolute gravy, in my opinion, because these
Yeah.
people publish everything they're going to do,
Yeah.
and they have been for 100 years or more.
And that's what's troubling is like, you're like, yo, dude, look, they wrote, dude, this was like 1910. They wrote this out. They said exactly what they're going to do, and they're doing it. So, like, how can you, like, I don't need a tinfoil hat, bro. They
Yep.
wrote it down. They said they were going to do
They
this. They're
told
doing
me.
it, and it's, and that's the other thing is they're working in concert with each other. That's like the whole Russia, China, like, tragedy and hope, one of Richard, I mean, they handpicked China. They made China the way they wanted it. Then they shipped all of our industry over there by design, and now here we are. And it's not like, oh, blah blah blah. No, I mean, this was all by design, and now we're coming to fruition. And China, in turn, has played all the same financial games that America has, with all the leverage and stuff, and all the overbuilt infrastructure with empty high rises and stuff. And, then there's we get these other weird, goofy comments about, well, Russia and China, evil America's trying to demonize them. Look, dude, they're all in on it. First off,
they're all in on it. This isn't a U.S. versus Russia. It's globalists versus the people.
Exactly.
Right? And the globalists, the Bolshevik revolution happened in all different countries.
Yeah.
And I think we're in some kind of high level spiritual warfare in a way. And I get kind of stoked about it when I think about it. And sometimes I'm out working on the homestead. Today I was doing a bunch of chainsaw work, and I kind of just get stoked when I think about this is our stand.
Yeah.
Whether you're doing it in the country or wherever, I'd rather do it in the country because I'd rather have a nice time. I'd rather breathe fresh air. But this is humanity's last stand. And I think I think ultimately God, the creator, is playing the New World Order. And ultimately, he's the one in charge, and these globalists, they don't know they're being played. They think they're going to be gods. Right? You listen to
Harari
and cronies, and they want to be gods. And it's the old cliche of Icarus, the wax wings. I want to go, or the Tower of Babel, or whatever. You look at all these great stories, and there's so much truth in them. And I think, this is our last stand. But the real optimistic spin I have on it is, this is our chance to step up and be who we were meant to be.
Yeah.
And,
And action cures fear, right?
yep,
And
it does.
permaculture is sedition. You know, these are the seditious acts. Like, oh, well, the
Yes,
masses say this is what they do. Well, we're not going to do that. We're going to do the opposite. We're going to observe the masses. We're going to do the opposite. You know, everybody's scared. Everybody's wondering, well, we're going to be happy, and we're going to trust God, and we're going to try to grow our own food. We're going to try, fail, and adjust, try, fail, adjust. But the freedom is in the action of doing and trying and attempting. And I mean, that's even, you know, even during the great industrial age of invention. I mean, that's where all of the wonder was, and the excitement. And I mean, you have to have hopes and dreams. You have to press forward and press on. You know, there was guys with tinfoil hats in the 70s, like, oh yeah, the commies are coming. Well, what about that guy? Look at the entire value of life that he lost with all of his stored food in his bunker, with his bottled water, right, and his gas mask in the 70s, right? 2023, right? And I'm not going to have kids. This world is a terrible place, and blah, blah,
exactly.
blah.
Yeah.
And 50, 60 years go by.
Now
right?
you're lonely and by yourself and
Yeah.
paranoid
And you have,
and jaded.
and you missed it.
It's a terrible way to be, and you missed it exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so to me, I look at all this as a test, and I go, you know, what a great time to be alive. What a great
Yep.
opportunity. Because hey, you know what? If we were all living in a utopia and everything was perfect, we might be bored. So
You're
this
right.
Yeah.
this is our opportunity, you know, and I
Yeah.
get stoked
Oh,
about
man.
it. And I don't know. I think I've worked at solutions for so long in my life in so many different ways. I've explored the law as almost as long as I've been doing farming. Actually, probably a little bit longer, really. I've been a truther longer than I've been a farmer. But I really just started looking at these things and reading the law, and just not accepting ignorance, you know, just
Yeah.
let's figure it out. You know, the answers aren't easy. None of it's easy, but it is the process, because life is a journey, and it's all about that journey and that process. And it's fun to get better, and it's fun to
Yep.
be a dad, like, you know,
Yep.
and then have your kids be better
Yep.
carpenters than
A
you are. You know,
million percent. Yeah.
how
Yeah.
blessed is that? But you did that, you
Yeah.
know, you created that. And so it's so important, and to just keep that attitude, because there is a lot of doom and gloom in this space.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
tired of it, frankly. Like,
Yeah.
I don't
Yep.
want to be ignorant. I want to
Sure.
know what these
Exactly.
guys are saying.
Exactly.
At the same time, I'm not going to let that bother me, because
Yep.
pretty
Exactly.
hard
Yep.
to be depressed where the view that I have into the valley. We
Yeah.
wake up to a glorious sunrise
Mm.
every morning, and you
Yeah.
know, whereas if you're living in the city and you're just watching truther videos, but you're
Exactly.
not doing anything,
Doing anything. Yeah.
it's
And I mean,
yeah,
what I'm doing now is, you know, we want to do like a silo fodder system for our longhorn. And you know, mulberries is an incredible forage. And so I've been collecting all these different varieties and like grafting them together. And it's
wow,
so I can't I can't explain how it's so satisfying, you know. And now we have a greenhouse, and you're just like, I'm trying to root out. I buy these different scions from all these different, you know, people online, and just trying to, okay, so this is going to be dwarf, and it's fast growing, and you know, and it's so weird how incredibly satisfying that is, to monitor that, track that, and say, okay, now I want to propagate these because I'm going to do like a grazing hedge. And it's just, it's very strange, because when you hear somebody like, if 9 years, if 5 years ago I heard somebody, I'm like, that's just kind of weird, you know. And now, like, I'm that guy, and that's so surreal to me.
yeah,
And that's the beauty. That's the beauty of this program. Informing people, giving people hope, giving people leverage and wisdom. You know, standing on the shoulders of giants,
yep,
taking all of your experience, condensing it into a program where people that have this exclusive question, like, how do I buy a
Mm.
homestead property?
Yep.
What do I look for? How do I do it? What's the process? What's the
yeah,
filter? how to, and then to be just like, wow. And it's a video course. You can absorb it. You pause it. You watch it at your convenience. That kind of stuff is, I mean, so powerful. That's what's so powerful about social platforms like YouTube, is that condensate, condensation of knowledge in one spot that's there, that you can easily access, come back to, reference, easily consumable. It's so powerful. Like, we can't,
the tools are unbelievable.
And that's what's so encouraging, in all the doom and gloom. Look what's out there. Look what's available. And look what people like Curtis Stone's doing. You're sitting in your apartment sucking your thumb, and you won't even grow a tomato plant on your on your balcony. And Curtis is enjoying the sunrise, and he's got his solar system and his greenhouse, and he's set up, and I'm sure we're going to be blown away by what you're going to end up doing by next year. But it's exciting. That's exciting. So. That's an exciting life, man.
Yeah,
it is. It's very exciting. But the thing is, kind of going on what you were saying about just the technology we have to educate people. It's amazing. I mean, before the advent, a lot of these tools that I use for this, it would have been very difficult to disseminate this information to people.
Sure.
It would have really involved in-person courses, and actually going on land and looking at things. But what we can use with these tools is unbelievable, and it can just save people so much time and so much money and just so much resources. And like, as you said, they can consume it as in the best way that works for them at their own schedule. Universities and all these are so redundant these days.
Yeah, it's
because I taught in the universities. I'm not even an academic. I taught urban farming workshops at universities all over the U.S. for years. And once I started speaking out, and they kind of came out as a libertarian anarchist, they kind of stopped inviting me. But I did. I was going out of Boston University every year for years and teaching and all these conversations about white privilege and on these panel discussions. I started rolling my eyes. And I just couldn't handle it anymore, and that's why I kind of got out of that space, or part of the reason. But we can teach people so much information so effectively and so cost effectively too. So cheap to get the information, and this can change somebody's life, and I really hope it does. And that's why I made it so cheap. I just want to help as many people get on the land as possible, experience what we both experience, because it does change your life when you get out of the city and you stop seeing all this liberal nonsense. And these snowflakes that freak out about everything. When you just get out of that matrix and you get back into nature, which is God's creation, and you experience that on a day-to-day basis, it invigorates your life. And it does. This I think the great opportunity for people like us going forward is that as the rest of the world is being demoralized, we're being remoralized.
Exactly.
We're being invigorated with the Holy Spirit and nature and God's creation. I think I'm witnessing it right now in the small communities all over the world. There's sort of a renaissance. There's going to be a new renaissance, and the New World Order wants to take us to this new breakaway civilization where they create another reset, just like World War II and many before, and they want to reset everything, get us back in the Stone Age. But I think for people like us, we're going to be reinvigorated and re-empowered and re-inspired, and we're going to find ways to collaborate. Maybe we'll create a new monetary system. Who knows? The sky's the limit. I think when people start coming together and start working together and looking at those common values, and in a way, the New World Order has done us a favor, because they've made the opposition to what we want so obvious that COVID in a way really united a lot of us, because we're like, I'm not doing that.
Yep. Yeah, that won't happen again. And it's just like, training my boys growing up. I'm like, look, here's the thing. Like, if you're just willing to show up, right, and then show up and then take responsibility for what you're asked to do, not like, well, what do I do now? If you're just willing to show up and take responsibility and look for what needs to be done, you're 89% already ahead of everyone. You're a Stradivarius violin. You are a you are the lost, you're the coelacanth, right? Like you technically don't exist, and you're like, wait a minute, you know, and you speak English. Wow. Like, and that's not a knock on anybody that's hardworking that doesn't speak English, but like, it's just so incredible how just the minorest thing can set you apart and put you ahead of the game, you know, and that's if you want to work for somebody else, you know,
Well,
but those same
things have
attributes.
gotten easier in that way because
Yeah.
so many people are so lazy.
Yep.
And that's the bad side of Americana kind of disappearing for most people, is that people become so entitled and so lazy that in a way it's kind of a blessing, because you don't really have to do that much to do pretty good.
No competition. You're right.
There's no competition. There's less competition now than there's ever been, because you're not, could you imagine being, you know, back in the early settler days of the US, that was competition, because people were hustling hard. All those hardworking immigrants that came out there, they were hustling. And now people are just so entitled, and it's just, all you got, hard work wins. That's all. Talent actually amounts for very little. If you just work more hours, you'll win.
I am proof of that. I have so very little talent. You know, I took instruments growing up, right? Was ultra mediocre piano, trumpet, just couldn't, and practiced a lot, and was just didn't have a natural talent. I wanted to be, you know, I wanted to have a talent. I wanted to be impressive. I wanted to play the solos terrible. You know, same thing with sports, you know, okay, well, maybe I'll, you know, well, I'm sure not going to be the basketball star. Maybe I'll be 10, and just was never excelled, regardless of, but you know what? I could work hard. So I always succeeded in being entrepreneurial and starting businesses and working and in sales, because you know what? I'll just outwork you. That's all. You know, I got street smarts. I'm not that smart. I don't got all the book smarts. I'm not a PhD, and certain things I can't absorb for whatever reason, but I'll just I'll work you into the ground.
Yeah.
Dude, that's exactly the story of my life, because I grew up fairly lower middle class. I had a number of friends that were wealthy. They, you know, I was the poor kid in my friend circle. A lot of my friends were rich kids. And I always thought, oh man, look, they got a nice pool. I go over to their house for the weekend and stuff. And it's so funny, because today, you know, 30 years later, I'm 40, what am I, 43? And I look at my old friend circle, and I'm the only one that crushed it.
Wow.
And all I did was just outworked everybody. That's all I did. When they were partying and doing drugs, I was working. Right. And I had a phase of that in my musician days when I lived in Montreal, for sure. But at the end of the day, even when I was a musician, I was hustling. I was always just networking and getting gigs and just working hard. And it just outwork everybody. And how blessed is that, to think that, you know, that's really all it takes. And I think people who are inherently lazy, or lazy is a disposition at this point in their life, they get intimidated by that. But here's the thing, folks. Just start. The hardest step is the first one.
You can change.
And then every step gets easier. You can change. And I've changed. And if you don't change, then something's not right.
Exactly.
You know, people get butthurt at me for no longer doing urban farming content. But it's like, that chapter of my life is over. I've changed.
Right.
I've evolved. And you know, most of my followers appreciate that. But, you know, you get some people that just think you should stay the same forever. And it's just, that's because that's what they want, because that's what they do. People,
because they never did anything. That's right.
That's right.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And so they make up excuses for themselves, and then they project that on you. And it's like, well, hey, I'm not static, man. I'm dynamic. I'm moving around. And
that's right.
And I like to get better. And I try to, you know, put that into my kids too. Obviously, you guys have with your family, and, you know, my wife and I watch your guys' videos, and we really admire how you guys have raised your boys. So, and you have a girl too, right? Your youngest is a girl.
One girl.
Yeah. It's so cool. So very blessed, and I really appreciate you guys, you know, reaching out and
thank you for
I hope it can help your listeners, you know.
I hope so, man. Hopefully. I really appreciate it. This has been an awesome conversation.
Been a blast.
I hope everybody enjoys this, and please go to we'll put the link down in the description. check it out. I promise y'all, hey, look, if anybody that's asked us about this, right, we've gotten no less than 2,000 to 3,000 comments.
Literally.
Like any of you, if you're still watching, check out this program. It is it is far more comprehensive than we can describe it. And I'm not exaggerating or making this up. And this is going to this is going to put your mind at ease, right? And you know how the husband and wife and the pillow talk and we're going to do what? And we're going to move where? And how are we going to do this? And who do we, and where do we go? And how do you even start? And where do you look? Well, look, half of those questions are going to be answered immediately. This is going to be a resource that you can continue to go back to and get more questions answered, and then have new questions like, oh, I didn't think about that. That's a great idea. And then you're going to know how to respond to that. I mean, this is such a powerful tool, and this is a culmination of all of Curtis's hard work, and he's offering it to you. And right now, it's going to be at a discount. So take advantage of the early bird special. And we just, I can't thank you enough, Curtis. Appreciate you taking the time and providing this information, because, hey, we share lots of information, right? And people think it's all doom and gloom or whatever, but no, we want to offer solutions. And what I explain all the time, like, as we're talking about different ideas, I'm like, hey, look, our life is the solution. Like, and I want to demonstrate that, like, you know, and people that said, oh, the Texas boys, I remember them like 6 years ago, and those little squeaky kids with the squeaky voices, like pretending to be like Justin Rhodes with a toy dinosaur. And look at them, they got a sawmill, they got an off-grid workshop, like they're still doing it. Like this wasn't a fad, this wasn't a phase. And you know, oh, we thought that Texas dad guy, like he was some kind of like a prick jerk, and like he had some kind of attitude. But look at those kids, man. Proof's in the pudding.
Proof's in the pudding. I mean? That's exactly it. The proof's in the kids. And here, one thing I'll say before we wrap up too, that I only started mentioning in the last few videos that I did, is we're going to offer to people that sign up for the early bird. Everybody who signs up for that is going to go into a draw, and I'm giving away 5 consults. So I'm going to draw. So we're going to, when we do the official launch on the 18th, and I don't know how many people will sign up, we'll see, but my wife and kids and I will be cutting these things out, and we'll be drawing in a hat. So I'm going to draw 5 names, and that they'll all get a free consult with me, and we can talk about whatever you want, you know, your homestead or holistic life context. And the other thing we're going to do that's going to be fun is I'm going to do a live stream for this on the 18th. So it'll be 9 a.m. PST. I guess that'll be, what is that? 11 a.m. Central time. You guys are Central time?
Yeah, we're Central.
Is everybody who signs up will get an email, and you'll get a form. And if you want me to review a property during the live stream, I'll do that too.
Wow.
And so it'll be fun, because then it will kind of show you the process. Because here's the deal. I have zero scarcity with this information. I'll give the information away for free. What the value is in seeing me do it over and over. Like I said, the framework, I've given that away in these last 14 YouTube videos I've put out. That's all free. The value is in the hours of consult. But the process. And we're going to do that on that live stream. So I'll just be picking people's properties, and then we'll go on Google Earth. We'll get in there. We'll get into the weeds and look at stuff, and just like I said, I just want to help people get on the land, and I want more people to do it and get the hell out of the cities, because it's just not sustainable anymore.
Yep, that's what we want, and we've been kind of preaching that since we started. And that's the other weird thing, bro, about this whole YouTube thing, as tyrannical and dumb and terrible as YouTube is. You know, we kind of started this thing as a hobby for the kids, and the impact and the people that we've been able to touch and help, and the people that have touched and helped us. You can't overstate like this. And I realize some of the interactions virtual, but even the people in real life that we've met, it's just been it's been an incredible net positive, you know. And to be able to put this information out there, and somebody can click a play button, and you can change people's lives. It's kind of surreal.
It is surreal. And then you find out all these people are just people too.
Yeah, just normal.
I get that. People, they meet me and they're, I'm just like, hey, I'm just a dude,
Yeah.
I know you've been watching me for thousands of videos, but I'm just a guy. And yeah.
Well, this has been great, Curtis. We appreciate you, man. And
appreciate you guys.
We're going to sign off and hope you all have a blessed day. And we'll see you all in the next video.
All right. Bye-bye.